let's jump in for those who are tearing their hair out because they're not joining us live and this is boring. Thank you so much for being here to everyone who is joining, to Nancy. For those who don't know, I am Andrea Bartz. I am the New York Times bestselling author of 5 thrillers. The most recent is called The Last Fairy Out, and I am the writer of the Substack Get It Right, which is a newsletter for writers. And I'm so thrilled to be talking to Nancy today. Can you share a little bit about who you are?
So I'm Nancy Reddy. I am a poet and a nonfiction writer. I feel like I kind of snuck into nonfiction, but they haven't kicked me out yet. I published my first book of nonfiction, The Good Mother Myth, earlier this year in January. So it's been almost a year.
Wow, almost a
And I wrote
year.
the newsletter, Be Less Careful.
Love it. Love it. It's a great newsletter for those who are not already subscribers. Definitely check it out. So today we're going to be talking all about author events. And, in the past, it felt like there was one way to do them and everyone shuffled into a bookstore and there was a reading and there was a convo and then you lined up to get a book signed and there was maybe cheap wine, although I feel like that's no longer a thing.
That's a
And today it should be. We should bring back the snacks and the drinks personally. But today there's different things you can do, and we're seeing a lot of momentum around these experiential book launches that kind of go beyond the old cookie cutter version, and that's what we're excited to talk about. But before we launch into that, and I ask all my burning questions, and those of you who've joined are very much invited to ask questions as well via the chat. I want to start by just giving you a moment to talk about the Good Mother myth and to tell us what it's about and if it in any way got you thinking differently about events.
Yeah, thank you for that. So the Good Mother Myth, I say it's it's the history of our bad ideas about how to be a good mom. So it's kind of half memoir, my own really challenging early years of motherhood. And then the mid-century science, which turns out to be pretty bad science that still haunts us today, I think, and is the source of a lot of unhappiness and unreasonable expectations about who you're supposed to be when you're a mom. And because it took 8 years to write, I think. I was doing other things at the same time as well. I had some other books come out as well. But, it really was this like incredible labor. And I was so excited to get it out in the world. And I also really I spent a lot of time thinking about, who is this for and who do I want to share this with? And how can I make this be not, as you said, like me reading at the front of the room, everyone else listening, and then we leave? Like, how can we really make this be a gathering in the kind of like Priya Parker a sense of the word? And so that was really something that I brought with me into all of the events that I've done in the last year.
I love that. So, to give us kind of a landscape of how you played that out specifically with the Good Mother myth, can you give us some examples of the kinds of events that you, organized that were a little bit non-traditional in maybe some
Yeah,
different ways?
I mean, the kind of dreamiest one, and so I'll start with like the big, dreamy, exciting one, and then talk about like some lower, scale things you can do. But my best friend, my oldest friend, has an art gallery in Philly that's a really small, amazing community space. And she, in the lead up to the launch, said, "Well, we really want to host your party," which is so generous. And I was like, "That's incredible." And we were talking about it, and she said, "Well, why don't we actually curate an exhibit around your book?" Which is so generous and immediately felt so good, because I feel like it took the focus from like me and my book, like, come look at me, to let's make this be a bigger conversation. And the call they put together was so beautiful, because it really was about mothering and myths of mothering. And so there definitely were mothers in the show who did lots of different beautiful art. There were also two men who had work that was about their own mothers and their experience of being mothered. And so the launch party there was really just like one of the most amazing nights of my life.
Wow.
They hung up the art. I read a little bit. Heather and I talked, but then also we had a couple of questions, and we invited the artists to come engage as well. And that was such a beautiful thing, to get to really have the art in conversation on the walls, and then have the actual artists come share their perspectives.
Yeah.
I think that's was really beautiful and amazing, is a very high level of like planning. So that's not necessarily something that's possible in every launch. I would say I did like a much easier, very approachable version of something that engages an audience. I did an event at a wonderful local bookstore here in New Jersey, Inkwood and Haddonfield, that was for Galentine's Day. So it was actually me and a romance novelist, Zio Axelrod, which was really fun because she writes romance novels that have friendship really at the heart of them. And my book is a lot about like the life-saving power of female friendship and early parenthood. And so Zio and I don't think we read. We each talked a little bit about that theme in our book. And we had a really wonderful crowd. It was everything from like moms I know from my kids' school to like people who wandered in off the street, people who were fans of Zio's who came and talked. And so we did some like turn and talk with the crowd where I said like, okay, we've been talking about this. Can you turn and talk to someone who's sitting next to you? I think the question we used was something like a time when you showed up for a friend or they really showed up for you. And people like it just immediately, people want to talk. I think we all want ways to connect with each other. And it just takes
Yeah.
a little nudge.
Yeah, I love that. I've never heard of a turn. I've never heard the phrase turn and talk before, but that's amazing. And now I want to
You've
use
never
it
been
all
a
the
ninth
time.
grade teacher. So
I guess that's why. That's
yeah.
really interesting. It's reminding me that I did an event with my sister right around Halloween. We're both thriller writers. Julia Bartz, great writer. If people are not familiar, and the two of us went to Long Island together for kind of a Halloweeny event to talk about thrillers and horror. And it was the night of that crazy rainstorm, flash flooding everywhere. It took us forever to get out there. And of course, there ended up being maybe 5 people in the audience because it was really difficult for anyone to get around. But because it was such a small crowd, we sort of, made it like a discussion that involved everyone. And like, we didn't use mics. We would answer a question and then be like, but what do you guys think? Like, what do you consider the difference between horror and thrillers? And it just made it really memorable and special. And yeah, I was thinking about it on the train ride home of like, what made that feel so cool? And it's just because we all want to connect. And it's fun to go to book events and, watch the author and learn more and feel sort of that one-way connection, but it's extra special when it's interactive.
Yeah. And I think that's my like kind of big theory about life, I think, is that we're all desperate to connect with each other and just need that nudge. For me, some of that does come from classroom teaching where you learn how to get people to involve. But I think like some like those 5 people, like those are your super fans. They must have been so thrilled to really get to have a conversation like that with each other and with you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they showed up, which God bless them for doing it in like the many feet of standing water. But it became, yeah, they feel like friends now. They feel like people that we really connected with and made it extra special, though it was not originally what we had in mind, of course.
It's not the
Um,
dream, but yeah.
yeah. So what's interesting is that, again, you write nonfiction and I write fiction. And I can almost see, if I were a little bit afraid of pushing the envelope in the way that book events work, I could have the defense of, oh, of course you can do that for nonfiction. Nonfiction is, people do speaking gigs and people give lectures and people are, teaching in a different way. Like you have all this research that you can talk about. And it might be a little bit more difficult for novelists to isolate, the theme or the point that they're going to wrap a whole event around.
Mhm.
Think outside the
Yeah.
box in terms of what other sorts of authors should I be bringing in, or non-authors and other experts. So what's kind of your advice for an author who, regardless of genre and whether they're writing fiction or nonfiction, what's your advice for sort of distilling that starting point around which to create and kind of put together an event?
That's such a good question. I would say I would love to. Like, I know there are people here. I know some of you who I would love to see your ideas too. I think the two things that you can definitely think about, regardless of what genre you're working in, are who you want to be in conversation with. I think a lot of us default to other writers, which can be great, but we forget that like there are all kinds of other interesting people in the world. And I think that's true for fiction and nonfiction. Maybe it's more obviously true. That was something that I really had to think about with my book, though. Like, I did a number of events with therapists who work in maternal mental health, and that was amazing to get to have those conversations because they really bring this perspective of the women they work with and the challenges they see there, which felt at the time kind of outside the box, like emailing a
Yeah.
reproductive psychiatrist and being like, "Hey, would you want to do a book event with me?" And now I'm like, why are we not doing that all the time? But I'd be curious to
Yeah.
know how novelists do that because I think maybe that feels like more of a stretch. But the other thing I think is the other like number two would be um what are you offering your participants or how do you see them like gaining from it? Because I think it can't be they can read your book at home by themselves. They can probably listen
Right.
to you on a podcast or listen to the audiobook of it. Um, so I think if you want people to come to an event, unless you're maybe Elizabeth Gilbert, you have to be offering them some kind of an experience other than just listen to me. And for me, that is almost always, we're going to have a conversation about X topic and you're going to be engaged in this way. How do you think that
Yeah.
works for novelists, though?
I think that's really smart. And I think a thing I'm seeing more and more and that I really like and that I want to bring to my own events is like, instead of asking someone to be my, interlocutor, and I will do, if it's my book, I will do 85% of the talking. You will ask questions, interlocutor, but I am the one who is answering all the questions about my book. Um, yes, I guess technically people are there mostly because if it's in person and it's in my town, it's because they know me and feel obligated. But they're there, to hear about the book and hear about the origin story and all that. But I think it's very different to reframe it as like this is going to be a conversation where I will not be the only one speaking. It will not be solely about my book. And it almost feels like there's that old school publishing thing of like, no, 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 this is the way we do it. It's going to sell more books if we're specifically talking about your book and we're promoting your book. And it's like, actually, I think people might be more likely to come, whether they have heard of me or not, if it's maybe a small panel of interesting people who all did books on a related theme. I mean, one example that's coming to mind is that my friend Leah Conan, who's
Mhm.
her next book is coming out under Leah Rowan. So I'm always telling people to go check out. She has an amazing Substack as well, called To Tell a Story. But she had a book come out that was called um, Keep Your Friends Close. I think I always mix it up with another similar title, and I really hope it's that. Leah Conan, look her up. Her thrillers are great. But she put together a little panel of thriller writers who have all written about female friendship in different ways. And so it was myself, Kimberly McCreight, and Zakia Delilah Harris. And the questions were, she sort of asked me ahead of time, would you kind of lead the conversation without officially being a moderator or anything? And I said, sure, I like kind of keeping a convo going. But she was not the only one who got questions. So, of course, we made space for her to tell everyone about her book, and we all did a round of applause. But the question sort of went to everyone. And I think even within a one-on-one conversation with whether it's another author or an expert, it's not that hard to answer a question and then say, but I would love to know how you do it. Or like, I want to hear from you as well. And just to make it
Yeah.
more interactive instead of like one person is asking questions and one person is answering. But to actually, that's a bit of a tangent. To actually answer your question, I don't know. I guess I don't see any reason that somebody couldn't choose a subject matter expert as, or somebody related to something going on in their books as their interlocutor. And I think it might be like kind of an unusual request for them, but why not? I mean, this event never happened because my book came out in March 2020, but my second book, The Herd, is a murder mystery that's set in a bougie all-female co-working space, and it was really written during the era of the tail end of like the girl boss era. And I was supposed to be in conversation with a friend who was, what was she? Something like the features director at Cosmo. She was high up in women's magazines and a friend, which is why I asked her. But I just thought it'd be interesting to be talking about these issues of, consumerist feminism and pinkwashing and all this stuff with somebody who was in the space, but from a slightly different perspective.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe it would feel like a weird request from the person you were asking, but I don't think it would be a problem to
Yeah.
sort of
And it
look
could
at
be,
like
I
what
don't
are the
know.
things I'm exploring.
I think writers sometimes just get such tunnel vision about what
Yes.
we're doing and who we're writing for. And I think like it is helpful to be reminded to go back out. And actually, this reminds me that one of the events that like really kind of blew my mind and got me doing the Turn and Talk was an event for Joe Piazza's The Sicilian Inheritance, that Janine Cook moderated. And she's a writer. She's also a bookstore owner. Um, but that's a novel, of course.
Mhm.
And Joe, I think, talked about the book a little bit. And then Janine said, okay, it's about like family secrets. It's a
Mhm.
murder. It's, how do you track these things down? And she said, okay, turn and talk to someone who's next to you. Like, who in your family could you write a novel about? Like, what is, and everybody
Yeah.
has to say about that. So I think a novel, you can pull the themes, you can pull the ideas out of. And it was so juicy. I went with a good friend of mine and like learned all kinds of stuff about her I hadn't known. We talked to two other people who were sitting next to us. Um, and that was really fun.
Yeah, that's so fun. It's gonna create such a memorable evening for the people who are there. I guess the question is, I hate that everything has to come back to selling books, but everything does sort of have to go back to selling books, author brands, all those related things,
Yeah.
right? So it's like those people were already there. So we've created a cool night for them, but like they didn't maybe know they were going to get a turn and talk, as you call it, turning and talking to their neighbors for those who joined us late. So what are the ways that, introducing non-traditional elements to your book events can sort of benefit you and your brand? Like, did you see firsthand experiences where people were, there was buzz building around like different stops on the tour, that people were staying in touch afterward and becoming more serious fans? Like what is sort of the bigger picture and the bigger payoff around thinking outside the box for events?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's such a great point that I think like events on their own don't necessarily sell books, right? The fact that you are going to take your body to a bookstore does not necessarily mean that like 25 people are going to come buy your book. And so that's kind of liberating actually to be like,
Yeah.
maybe these events are not, this is kind of the opposite of what you were just saying, but like maybe these events are not actually going to be what like sells a million copies of my books.
Mhm.
But what they can do, as you're saying, is give people a meaningful interaction, get them to think deeply about things, get them hopefully to stay in touch with you, to like follow you on Instagram or sign up for your newsletter or whatever. I also think the framing of an event um, is what helps get people there. If it's not, come see Nancy Reddy, because I don't know. But come be part of a conversation. Come to a
Yeah.
Galentine. Come to, an event. I've been trying to work on an event around like mompreneurs and networking. Like people want to come be part of something, I think more
Yeah.
than they usually want to come like hear someone. And I think that can
Yeah.
really help. And then, of course, there's the whole like level of social media. Um, Work around it where I feel like
Marketing. Yep.
there's the event itself and I like all of us have a very mixed relationship with that. But that can be part of the fun of it. I mean, some of the stuff that I've loved sharing is like look at 10 seconds of all these women talking in this bookstore and having an incredible event. I don't know that that makes people buy my book, but maybe it gives them the idea of like this is something I want to do. Um
Yeah.
and so I think being able to make and share content around those events, like before they happen and then also afterwards, is great and also just fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels, I think, a lot more exciting, or it would for me feel more exciting to like encourage people to come and be a part of an event and a conversation than like, here's my book event moderated by this other author. There will be a 2-minute reading, like all of the normal stuff. Um, I am curious. So you had an event in this gallery. I know, have partnered with bookstores. What is your feeling? I also saw that the lovely L'Oreal has jumped into the chat, and she is a bookstore owner herself. Not to put you on the spot, but when it comes to working with bookstores, do you find it's a bigger ask to say, hey, could you send somebody to an event to sell books at something that's going to be an offsite for you, or are they really open to hosting kind of non-traditional stuff within the store? We know in general terms that it's a lot of work for a bookstore to host an event. For them, book sales are kind of the
Yes.
one of the biggest metrics, right? Like, is it worth the money that they had to spend, like, on additional labor and whatnot? So what has it been like, and what advice would you have when it comes to, and anyone jump in the comments if you would like as
Mhm.
well, when it comes to planning non-traditional events,
Yeah.
vis-a-vis booksellers?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And I think some of it is honestly just like being a member of your like literary community and being a bookstore
Yeah.
buyer, like Julia Dinkwood has been really generous with me in terms of her time, and in part that's because she loves hosting events. Like she loves having poetry night at the store, which is amazing because
Yeah.
that really doesn't sell a ton of books. I don't think. I mean, it gets people in the store, but um, she really sees the space as a community space, which I appreciate. But also, I go to events at her store. I buy books at her
Mhm.
store. I think being someone that they know that your bookseller knows already is really helpful and important. I think just in general in the writing world, like you don't want your first interaction with anyone if you can avoid it to be asking them for something. That said,
Yeah.
I definitely did cold email people. I did an event at Godmother's out in California where on the website they're like, our friend Oprah Winfrey gave us this name. And I was like, I'm going to email you and see if you'll host
Yeah.
us. And they were lovely. They were
There
lovely.
you
So
go.
you can cold email, like send a nice email. And I would say with that, it's important. And I've gotten this feedback from lots of booksellers to talk about, what you're going to do to promote the event, like how you're going to like just show that you're going to be a good partner, that you can actually get people to show up. Um, I mean, I don't know. Bookstore owners and booksellers are just the best people in the world. And I think want to
True.
partner with people. I don't think I've asked anyone to be a bookseller offsite. Like at the
Good.
gallery event, I sold my own books. Like I had a box of books that were sent to me for my press. I don't know.
Okay.
Have you, that seems like a harder lift. Um,
So
so I
the
don't
way
know.
Yeah, the experience that I've had with that was that, so I'm from Brookfield, Wisconsin, which is a suburb of Milwaukee. And in the past, I've done events with Boswell Books, which has a location in the city. And I asked if they would be open to sending somebody to sell books at an event that was in Brookfield, because there's a lot of people from that suburb who are very scared to drive downtown.
Ooh, yeah. Wait, that's such a great neighborhood. Sidebar.
That's yeah, which I was like, so I think actually initially in with my first book, I did have it downtown and people came, but my parents were like, a lot of our friends would have come if so then for the herd, which again it was March 2020, I was going to have one event at Boswell Books itself and then another event at the local library for which they were going to send a bookseller. And I thought that seemed pretty safe because if you have two different events within, in that case, 15 minutes of each other, it can be sort of a bad look if it's different booksellers because they could be
Yeah.
cannibalizing each other's sales, right? But it was the same seller behind them. And I think because a lot of people had showed up for the last night, and I sort of made the case, like people will come to the suburbs, they were willing to do it. The tour never happened. It was the end of March 2020. And then when I finally was on tour again the next time there in 2022 or something, and ever since, I've only done events in the suburbs at like a library. And they've sent someone, and they've always been well attended because that's like where a lot of my community is,
Mhm.
obviously. So I think for them, it has been worthwhile to have a person making the however many mile drive. Um, but but yeah, it's something to think about. Are you going to sell your own book? If you're deciding to do it in like a non-traditional setting, I've been to really cool book events that are at somebody's like rich friend's apartment in New York City. And part of the appeal is like you get to go into somebody's like beautiful old pre-war building in the Upper East Side or something. And
Mhm.
I went to a cool one that was sort of in a warehouse space they rented, and it felt like a party, and it had a liquor sponsor. And it's a decision you have to make. Are you going to ask a bookseller to come and sell books, which has the benefit of it's all counting as sales, which of course, when your book has just come out, like getting sales that's probably when it feels the most kind of urgent, right? Um, but it's a lot of pressure. You are sending someone, you are really hoping everyone is going to buy copies versus bringing your own. You have to manage it yourself. You have to physically get them there. And that creates a certain scenario. Miranda jumped in with what I think it's so hard to read these, so apologies to everyone. I think making a case for the fact that you can promise a lot of people attending can often make or break whether an independent bookseller is open to selling offsite or hosting you at their store. It's a great point, and it does create an additional pressure on you if you've said, "Oh, I think we definitely will get at least 2 dozen people," and then it's getting close, and
Really.
everyone is canceling on you because everyone sends those goddamn "so sorry" texts the day of, and you're like, "Oh my god, what if nobody comes?" So, I mean, another thing that I think is a cool way to do it, and I know Joe Piazza is a big fan of this, is people have to buy a ticket, and the ticket
Yeah.
is a copy of the book,
Yeah.
and or sometimes a copy of the book or a cheaper, maybe $10 gift card to the bookstore. And that way it's sort of a guaranteed ROI for the bookseller and the additional labor and money that
Yeah.
they are investing in it. I don't know. Have you tried that where
Gonna say we should talk
the
about ticketing. Yeah, because I think I found that to be very helpful, honestly. I think it helps people. It's really easy to RSVP for free. But if people are in for even $10, I think I'm not sure exactly what the magic number is. For me, if I've invested $10, I'm much more likely to show up. And I think there's a lot of power in ticketing. I think also I have a friend who runs, she's a writer as well, and runs these really wonderful like kind of monthly gatherings. And here in South Jersey, More Than Mothers. And so I've watched her pricing model, and she tickets all of her events, and she has to pay. I don't think she pays herself, but she should. But she pays for the venue. She sometimes pays a speaker, and it's anywhere from maybe $30 to $60, depending on what it is. And people will show up because they want to be part of this thing. They want what is being offered, and that's been a really helpful reminder for me that the event has value, that the book has value. Um,
yes,
and there's just something nice about knowing, like, okay, people are on the hook for this. They probably are going to show up. I
they're
feel
probably
like
going
ticketing
to.
is often a decision that booksellers make. But I think you could also talk to a bookstore and see what they wanted to do. And of course, if you're hosting it someplace else, you can set up your own event, right? Um, and figure that out. I think it's helpful to get people to feel like they're on the hook, because then they
Yeah. They're invested. Yeah, I have 2 quick stories about this. And Kate said I go to those all the time at Anderson's in Naperville. I love there's so much Midwest so many Midwest vibes right now. It's like literally snowing outside this window in front of me. Thank you guys for being here. But my 2 stories are that when I went on tour for my most recent book, The Last Ferry Out, by far my best attended event, with I think it was like 55 or 60 people, was at Bookmarks in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And I have a few my partner's family is from not too far away, maybe 30 minutes away. But between her family and everyone I could think of in the area, that was maybe 3 or 4 of those people. Everyone else just loves this bookstore and will happily pay. The reason I bring this up, it was ticketed. They all spent $30 on a margarita. It was called Murders and Margarita or Margaritas and Mystery or something like that. And they got a drink and they got my book. So they all became buyers of my book, which like that's a really significant number. And so when Joe Piazza told me that she tries to only do events now that are ticketed like that, I was like, that is absolutely genius. And people will go.
uh
My flip side of that, and something I have finally learned that I won't do again, is that with these, I mentioned these events at libraries in Milwaukee, which I've now done a few for different books, with Boswell Books being the seller. And at both libraries, they had free registration was required. I think initially they said registration encouraged, but it was free. And the space could hold like 120 people, and so they left 150 slots for 100 for admission in the wait list. And people signed up, which is so great. There was good local. There's a local story. The local newspaper did something. The local magazine did something. People signed up, and for 2 books in a row, they hit 150, and the library said, well, we can't have more people than that because, fire code. And if people show up and they've RSVP, there's not space. So they put up a sign, 2 different libraries put up a sign that said, event full, no wait list. If you're not on the list, like turn around and go back. And then guess what happened? If anyone would like to make it, and I was pleading in both cases, like, just let people come. We can open the door for them 5 minutes before. Just let them wait. Guess
yeah,
what? There are about 95 people who actually came. It was actually almost exactly 95, and 20 to 25 empty seats in both cases. And not all these people bought books. These were free RSVPs. And I literally heard from people who were like, I really wanted to go, but when I checked that morning, the website said like RSVP was full and no wait list, so I didn't. And those are book sales that I
I
gave up,
know.
potential book sales.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I
So,
mean, I would say I estimate like for a free RSVP, I estimate you're going to get about 50% of that. So your 95
oh,
is
I think
probably
less.
as dire as it could have been, but
It's
yeah.
no, it's true. I think in general, what's the wedding rule? It's like everyone you invite, like maybe for a wedding, it's like 2/3 will come. I don't know. In this case, half would be, yeah.
Yeah,
It's just
right? So, like, but oh man, and to think like there were people who really wanted to be there. Yeah, I think it's tough. And any sort of book tour, there's such a balance of like where are the spaces where you know you can really take charge and run it the way you want to versus, this is how the library does it. And to some extent we have
right.
to roll with what they say. I think the other thing, and
Yeah.
I'm just for watching Joe, since we're talking about sales, like it is hard for me, but important to be an advocate for your book at the event. Like oftentimes, so if you're moderating, for sure, do that. But if it's your book, even so, to be like, hey, and buy my book. Because sometimes people just need
Mhm.
that one more nudge to actually get a copy after they've heard you talk about it. At the Sicilian Inheritance event, Joe said, you know what I've been doing is every time I find a book that I like, I just buy a bunch of copies of it so then I can give it to friends, like anytime it's a book or whatever, and I don't have to give them some dumb candle. I give them a book that I love. And you better believe multiple people at that event bought 2 or more hardcover copies of her book. And I was like, oh. And she wasn't
That,
pushy. She sounded very
yeah.
genuine. Like, I love books. You should buy books. Buy my book. Um,
Yeah.
and that's, I
No,
think it's hard to feel okay doing that. I struggle with it, but I think that's something we should be doing more of is advocating for that ourselves.
yeah, advocating for our own books, reminding people that supporting the bookstore that is the, entity that made this possible is so important. I like to say too, and if you're not leaving with my book, like I really encourage you to check out the other amazing books they have here, and they have great cards and swag and everything else. Just reminding people that yeah, like this is a business, and I think that's a great idea too to encourage people to buy it as a gift because it's like you're not trying to get someone to buy some like plastic piece of crap that they don't need. Remember, you are asking them to buy something that literally makes the world better in every way. It nourishes them. Books, challenge us and get us to feel connected and to look at the world in a different way and to increase our empathy and to sort of fight back against the like, slow decline of everything making us human thanks to AI. Like it is not you being shilly to tell people to buy your book and or the book of your moderator if they're also a book and all of that. I think it's a really important part of it. Um, that's actually something I wanted to talk about too is we are in agreement that like having these events in person, part of what's magical about them is that you're in community, right? And like we as a society are so desperate for community and love to connect. And you can make it, you as the sort of author behind it can increase that by having people turn to their neighbors, by making it a whole discussion, by making it a back and forth event and adding these other elements. What about virtual events? They are such a big part of the landscape, especially post 2020. What's your take on whether or not they're worthwhile? What people can do to make them feel like something worth joining? What's sort of your take on creating cool events when it comes to the virtual space?
That's such a good question. I'm trying to remember now if I've done any virtual, like specific virtual events for my book, and I can't remember now, which it's been a year. But I will say one of the so part of what for everyone who's here, part of what like inspired this talk, why I reached out to Andrea was that I wrote an article for Poets and Writers, which I don't have near me, but I think it's in the issue. I think it's still on book stands if you're like near Barnes and Noble. But I wrote an article about book events. And one of the people I talked to for that was the poet Laura Cronk, who had a March 2020, or maybe it was December 2020, but had a
Right.
2020 launch. And so, of course, it was virtual. And she hosted this incredible multi-part party. Like she really was like, okay, we're not going to just take a poetry reading and put it on Zoom. So we're really going to make a party. And so I think I'm trying to remember what else she did because there were all these layers to it. The book was partially about like experiences of the kind of otherworldly. So she had someone, it wasn't quite a seance, but there was some sort of mystical component to it hosted by someone that people could participate in or not. There was a cocktail making part of it. A friend of hers,
Cool.
she thought out in advance, like you could make a cocktail. She had the ingredients and they all made their drinks together. There was another part where someone who's a singer songwriter like sang a song, and she really took advantage of all of the things that you can do, all of the ways you can invite people to participate. And what I do think can be lovely about virtual events is you can bring people together who couldn't physically be in that space. You know, she was like, I had these 3 different people contributing to this party, and there's no way we would have all been able to be physically in the same space. And so I feel like that's maybe something to think about is who can you invite to be in conversation with you that is harder to be actually in the same room with? And then who can you invite to be in the audience maybe? What do you think? I mean, you certainly have done your rounds of virtual events.
Yeah.
One off the
Yeah,
top.
well, because I
Yeah.
had The Herd came out in March 2020, so that whole thing was canceled, and then that whole tour and everything was canceled. And then We Were Never Here, my next book, came out in August 2021, which just because of where we were in the cycle, nobody even breathed a word of there being a physical tour. Like there was no my first book event wasn't until that book came out
I
in
think obviously
paperback.
has had a great life. But yeah, frustrating to have not gotten to tour.
Yeah, yeah. So no, of course I was like very, very fortunate that book did well and hit the list and was a Reese pick, but it was very strange because it was all just happening while I was like at home, unable to see other people. But as you were speaking, what struck me, the two sort of most memorable moments from that launch, were one was like my virtual launch, which I believe was through Books Are Magic, but it
Mhm.
was a lot like what we're doing now, right? I was in conversation with another author, but I had the idea for the book while I was on a trip with a good friend who lives in Australia, and she was able to join in real time. I think it was probably kooky timing for her, but I think it was her morning, like 13 hours later. And just seeing that, like, my dear, dear friend Jen was sort of experiencing the launch at the same time as everyone else was amazing. And the other amazing event was that through Reese's Book Club, they hosted a sort of virtual book club. And Megan Miranda was the one sort of asking me questions. And again, it was a relatively traditional chat about the book, including audience questions. But as we were waiting for people to file in, and on the Zoom chat, everyone was saying where they were coming from, and just watching people coming from all over the world and saying that it was still novel. I feel like now it feels a little bit less magical to be in conversation with so many different, to have people from all over
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
live. And now we have Substack Live and Instagram Live and TikTok Live and all the other ones.
Yeah.
But I'll just never forget that moment of like, holy crap, these people are choosing to sit down at their phone or at their computer right now and be here with us. And like, how special is that? So I really love this idea of like, how can I do that not just with who gets to attend, but who gets to be a part of
Yeah.
it with, how do we make this an interactive experience? I'm going to read another comment from Miranda. Sorry, I'm reading these weirdly. They show up so weird. Substack, call me. I have some notes. One of my favorite virtual events, summer 2021, was a roundtable with some of my writer friends who had read the novel in draft and seen how it changed as I wrote. So it ended up becoming a nice discussion of craft with very accomplished writers. That is very, very
That's
cool.
really cool. Lee Stein did an event for, I don't think I have it right here, her book of poetry, What to Miss and When. That might not be exactly right, but that was another pandemic kind of era one. And she did that event with her editor, which it's so unusual for poetry to really get edited. But that book, I think
Mm.
she's put on proposal. And then she really did have an editor, Sarah Lynn Rogers, who's a great poet in her own right. And they did an event together and talked about, I think, like what had been in the proposal, the prospect of working, the process of working on the book together. And that was similarly fascinating to see kind of how it had come together.
Yeah.
It was a really smart approach to the event.
That's really cool. And I guess it's sort of audience dependent of like who's going to enjoy a discussion of craft versus more of a
There's a
discussion.
specific audience that really wants that kind of a deep dive in a poetry book, but they reached it.
Yeah. This is reminding me too that I did do a friend of mine used to organize in person in like Bushwick, Brooklyn, more than 10 years ago. She would organize bad writing parties, and we would all come and we would bring our own bad writing from deep in the past. So somebody was reading a article they wrote for their college newspaper. Somebody was reading from their live journal. Somebody's reading from their middle school diary. Somebody's reading their first attempt at a novel. It's hilarious. It was great fun. And we did one time the same group. Now we live all over the planet, literally. And yet we did a Zoom bad writing party, and we all took a turn reading something virtually. And that was incredibly fun. So yeah, like what are those things that actually were kind of fun and special and cool about especially lockdown days when we were doing trivia together, or, my partner did during her virtual team week, which what a horrible phrase, did a you could do an escape room with, virtually. You had like sort of an avatar, which was a person who was standing in the physical room, and you could click on things and they would do what you were instructing them to do. Obviously, that's not an A to B of what we as authors are going to be bringing to our audiences, but just thinking outside the box of like, what's a weird way that maybe this would translate to a virtual event that we aren't thinking about yet. We have a few more comments I'm going to share. Aline said, yes, I attended that. It was great. Oh, I think talking about Miranda, especially to hear, oh no, about Lee's, especially to hear how that unfolded with poetry. And then Rebecca said, are there places where you would pitch virtual events like this? Which is a great question. So some of the book events I've done have been with bookstores that sort of are set up for it. But more recently, like I'm still doing events. I have still done events with Books Are Magic, but they'll do a physical event and they'll mic us up. We'll have both a physical mic and a lavalier, and it will get live streamed at the same time and end up living on Facebook and everything, and YouTube, which is cool. But what's a way? Would you work with a bookstore to do it if you wanted to also have there be book sales, or you could just sort of organize it yourself and keep sending people to the bookshop link or to your local, bookstore via chat. What do you think?
Yeah, I've done with previous books. There were bookstores that were doing, I think even after the pandemic, we're still running some virtual series as a way of kind of figuring that. Kind of people want to do virtual things. Maybe they don't. I don't know. White Whale in Pittsburgh is an amazing bookstore if you're in the Pittsburgh area. And I did a virtual event with them. I think as late as 2023, they were still doing some that way. I think what bookstores found, though, is that those generally just like don't drive sales, or at least they don't drive sales to their store in the same way.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
So I don't know if there are bookstores that are still doing that. What I found, I think the Zoom stuff that I've done, I basically just hosted myself, or someone else has hosted it and like promoted it through my own newsletter, through Instagram, etc. It's kind of nice to just be the boss of that. I think with those, of course you want to sell books, but I think it's more about sharing the thing, kind of getting it out there, doing the buzz. It's like you're never guaranteed a ton of sales at an event, but I think that, with virtual, it's even less so.
Right.
There were for a while a handful of online poetry reading series, but I would suspect that a lot of them have kind of gone away in the wake of the pandemic. But maybe people know. I don't know if anybody knows of any ongoing ones. I think 100 Pictures of Honey is still going. But yeah, I mean, I think like the freedom of the online event is that you and your Zoom event can host it. You can record it. You can share it wherever you want, and do it alongside, whoever else you want to be in touch with.
Right. And there's no guaranteed sales from it anyway, but at least this way you don't have to worry about disappointing a bookstore that you told, like, I think you'll sell this.
Or bookshop link, right? Like, if you're going to come sale, you can get the cut of it potentially. So
Exactly. Yeah. Set up your own little bookshop on bookshop.org. Like, use that affiliate link, encourage people to buy from there. That's a great tip. I have one idea as we're down to our last 15 minutes, but I think it could be cool if somebody's feeling really brave, who is among the 40%, the 40 people who are with us now. If anyone wants to share kind of a quick elevator pitch about their book, fiction or non, maybe the two of us could sort of like kick around ideas in real time of like how they could, extrapolate that into a in-person or virtual event, like what kind of experts they might think about or what sort of interactive activities might come out of it. So
I love this so much, and I'm scared. So,
exactly, and putting us on the spot as well as putting you
pitch your event.
on the
I
spot.
know there are people here who have books coming out in this year. So,
Yeah, yeah. Or if it's
love
one
to
that's
think
already
about
out and you can,
activities though. Maybe while people are thinking or like typing, I could share as well. One of the events that happened along with this gallery exhibit for my book was an artist talk. And that was moderated by the poet Raina J. Leon. And she had people, so she's a poet and she had the artists and she talked to them about their work, but she also had participants. She gave us slips of paper that one of her kids had cut out and everyone had to write a word on it, maybe that was connected to their mother. And we made like a quilt out of it. And there was something really beautiful about, listening to these artists talk, but we were also making something. And I think we forget about some of us love to talk. I love to talk, but we forget about other ways of involving people that you could like write a little something on a slip of paper. You can work together to make a quilt. So,
yeah. Yeah, I've been at events too where there's some sort of interactive element like a little craft table or a do this on the way in or a like fold this up and put it in this in this bin and they'll pick something out to do something with later. Like what are just ways you can make it a little special and memorable. It's also such a crowded market. Like we know now that there's just thousands and thousands of books coming out every single week. And so just having that extra edge of like making people feel something,
yeah.
is makes a difference, and makes it feel special. I also am remembering, and I wish I could give them credit and say the name, but somebody told me that there's a rom-com writer, or maybe it was a romance writer, who was on tour, and she was big enough to be like, sent off on tour, but she would start every event by doing a shot with her moderator, which there's a lot of issues with that. I am not in any way advocating for it with anyone. But you got like that made its way to me. That, and
Yeah.
I am not much of a rom-com or romance reader. Like it was just something that people would then share on their social media. It was memorable. It was wacky. If you have some sort of talent or something some like cool trick you can pull off, at the beginning. I actually did this is reminding me, I did one event for the last night in Chicago, another Midwest callback with a friend who is a professional magician. She now lives in New York. Her name is Jeanette Andrews. If anyone is looking to hire a badass female magician. But she did a brief, she did like 3 tricks. She did a brief performance that was based on themes from the book. And then she interviewed me about the book. And a lot of people afterward were like, that was one of the coolest events I've ever been to. Because who doesn't like magic? And just memorable and different. And it was so cool for me to see like what she kind of, I just told her a bunch about the book and then she read it and then she like pulled from her sort of repertoire of like performance tricks to do. She said I can call them tricks. It's not, they're an illusion. I don't know if anyone else watches or has watched Arrested Development. But
Of course.
that was a very, very cool thing. Again, still encouraging anyone who feels brave enough to share what their next book or a prior book is about so that we can maybe in real time come up with some spitball about what an event might look like. But yeah, that's actually a question I wanted to ask. What's the best or one of the best, because I hate having to choose a superlative, what are the best book events that you've ever been to that wasn't yours and what made it so special?
Oh, that's such a good question. See, I love that question, but I have such a hard time like pulling things up off the top of my
Yeah,
brain. Um,
same.
but I will say I did not, and maybe something else will come to me in a moment. I did not attend this event, but one of the other people I talked to for that Poets and Writers article was Kern Carter, who's a like YA novelist. And he had such creative ideas, to your point about the magician, about how he was going to share the work. He, and writing YA, he's like, I actually need to get involved with young people so that they hear about it. They're the audience for it. And so before maybe his second book launch, he got in touch with, I think he lives in Toronto, like a performing arts high school in Toronto, and said, I I'm having this book come out. This is what it's about. We've got one here, so I'll be quick. would your students want to create a book cover for it? And so he got all of these. He might have been self-pub at that point. I think he's with Harper now. I met him in self-pub at that point. And so all of these students created book covers, and then he displayed them all. I think at the thing they came, they bought books, and I love that idea of thinking about how you're building your audience before the book is even out there, and then really involving those people. And I think at that event, he said that he had an actor who was doing part of um the like performing scenes from it. He also actually like cut up the book and made it into an art display all around the room. Um, so definitely the most creative ideas. But I'm going to scroll back so I can read this
Yes.
title. Oh man. All right, I'm going to read this and then you can think. Debut thriller, The Better Mother. It's and this is Jennifer Vanderploot. I hope I'm saying that correctly, but I want to make sure that we get your name too. Fatal Attraction meets The Hand That Rocks the Cradle thriller about jealousy and competition between two women. Okay, so launch event at Barnes and Noble. And she has a convo partner, but she wants to. Oh man, I'm so excited about all these thrillers.
Yeah. She
Yeah.
said it's kind of anti what to do as a new mother. So sort of the opposite of yours. Okay. Let's talk about it then because we have another one from Natalie that I am excited to talk about. So this is sort of like the inverse of what you did. Well, I mean, an obvious and low-hanging fruit would be um no, she already has a conversation partner. I was going to say to think about those other experts in sort of the mothering space, but um yeah, is there something with like, I don't know, mommy bloggers or mom influencers where you could like take and twist on its head something that was like a trend on social media or um I don't know, you're now watching like now we're being put on the spot very
I
intentionally.
know. I love that.
But
Though. Yeah.
yeah.
I had an idea in my head and it flew out again. But this is what I was thinking of is just thinking about like who do you invite to that event, right? Because obviously, like you invite everyone you know, like all of your friends and family and all of that. But I think also thinking like, well, who is the audience for this and how do we reach them? And so I would be trying to reach out to like specific groups, right? Like, are there new mothers groups in your area? Are there like there's a place in my town called The Village that does things. So like are there specific groups that you think would be interested in this book? Because I feel like that's just in terms of turnout. If you can kind of key into specific communities, that really helps. So that's less about the format of it and more about the promotion of it. Um, I guess I love the idea of playing with like the kind of social media influencer tropes though, right? Like I can imagine really fun graphics to promote it that would be like,
Yeah.
you've been told that da 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 da, and then this instead.
Yeah. Well, it also is striking to me that the two comps are very much like 90s thrillers, which was such a particular era, Fatal Attraction and The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Like, wonder if there's something you can do that plays with that. Like, ooh, yeah, and Jennifer just said baby shower theme. Love. Is this like the baby shower that you'll never forget? Can we bring in some of that sort of like noiry 90s, movie poster vibes to the marketing or branding? Can we dress up? I really like this, baby shower idea. That's very creepy. Kate just
Yeah.
added costume
Dress up
contest.
costume
Uh,
contest as well.
Amazing. I love that. And in our last few minutes, I want to be sure to also uh, address Natalie's, who said, I'm conscious we just sent an arc, but I've got an upcoming thriller out about two sisters and four friends in a locked room thriller on an African safari. I was thinking putting up photos of animals hiding and trying to get people to find them would be fun. I love this talk so much, so many ideas. I love that. In my story too is that I didn't realize until like several years ago that photo safari is not what people call photo hunts. Did you guys know this? When it's like, oh, here's your list of like photos to go find. I called it as photo safari because I went to Northwestern, and for some reason at Northwestern there was like a copyright issue, so all of the groups on campus would call it a photo safari. And I kept calling it that as an adult, and everyone was like, literally, what are you talking about? But I say that to say, amazing idea. Include these photos. Let people know maybe when they come in, ask them to sign in, and you can get their, in doing so, you can get their email for your own, have them sign up for your newsletter, ask them to follow you on Instagram, anything like that. But also they get a little slip that's like, there are 12 animals hidden around these safari grounds. I think that's so fun. Can there be, I don't know, animal sounds playing? Can there be like cool little party favors? I know people want less kind of crap in their lives, but what about you? I'm speaking a lot.
I love that. I feel like with both of these ideas, I feel like the bad baby shower games are really getting a lot of traction, which is genius. Would make amazing social media content because I feel like that's always a layer of the event, right? You're doing the event, but you're also documenting that you're doing the event because that's going to have much bigger reach than what you can get. But maybe even more important than that, they feel really fun. And these are both books that they're thrillers, they're twisty, I'm sure they're high drama. But I think it's a good reminder that you can also lean into what's fun about them and that's what people are going to be excited about.
Yeah. Yeah. And can you have, I don't know if there's just a couple, maybe 3 like prizes that you're going to give out at the end via a raffle or something that are in some way related to your theme, whether that's, and like actually stuff people want. Maybe you can, if you have friends who own small businesses or something like that. But I don't know, is there a way to keep people engaged through the end because they got their little raffle card when they walked in, or if they found all 12, they get some sort of prize.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something
And the price could
like
be like
that.
swag. I mean, I don't know. You have to think about how you framed it. It could be like bookmarks and I don't know, pens you make up or something. Miranda's also pointing to it could be the two sisters, four friends could also be expanded to more friendship, which could be attractive to women who'd be coming together, which I think goes to the marketing and as well that you can say you and your best friends or you and that was part of my pitch with the Galentine's event, right? Like bring your best, how did I put it? I didn't say lady friends, but whatever. And that was part of what was really beautiful, right? Seeing these groups of women. There were 2 women who came to the event. One had taken the other one out. She was very pregnant and was like, let's go out. And they just kind of happened in. I was like, yes, this is what it's about. Bring your friends to this event that is about friendship. So
yeah. Yeah. And have a turn and talk. Have people share like their I don't know, weirdest babysitting story or their favorite 90s thriller or if you were on a safari that got stranded overnight, who would you want to be in the Jeep with you? Like just get people sharing the stuff together, vacations gone wrong, any of those things.
and I think there's so much to talk about with both of these books and really with anything.
Yeah. And congratulations to both of you. These sound really awesome. Can you guys drop the titles of them so that I can say them aloud for anyone who's listening to this after the fact and we can all watch for them in the coming years?
They both sound amazing.
Yeah, they both sound amazing. Congrats to you. And thank you so much to everybody who joined. Once again, I'm Andrea Bartz. I'm the author of many thrillers and the author of the Substack Get It Right, which is a newsletter for authors. I'm here with Nancy.
Yeah, I'm Nancy.
You again share your
a couple of books. Most recently, The Good Mother Myth, and I write the newsletter Be Less Careful.
Yes, and Natalie's book is The Night Hunter by Natalie Moss, and The Better Mother comes out February 10th by Jennifer Vanderkloot. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Happy holidays to all. Thank you so much to you, Nancy. This was really, I feel like I got a ton of ideas out of this.
I know, so. I'm excited. I gotta get another book out there so I can do more events. I love it.
Exactly. All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.